Lawrence Fishburne is an awesome individual. He has such gravitas, such presence. I was very, very excited to be working with him. You know, he was extremely professional. He really, it's great when you have an actor like that within your crew, within your cast, because he sets a standard. You know, this man was in Apocalypse Now. You know, obviously this was before Matrix, but he still was such a big star for Paul and I. He'd done so many movies that we really liked, but he was really easy to work with. But one of the great things about him is you just cut to him and he's got such presence. He doesn't really have to do much. So he's worth millions of dollars just in that presence alone.
You know the rules, people. Someone drops the ball, we get the call. Now, let's go.
Fish loved the movie. That was, you know, he really, really liked it. A friend of mine met him in New York about a year and a half after he'd finished filming Event Horizon. And he was wearing his full outfit, you know, the flight suit, the Captain Miller flight suit.
I was very intimidated by working with Lawrence because he's a big American film star and he's kind of very cool and charismatic, and you know, he's nominated for an Oscar, and he's, you know, he's just a brilliant actor. So the first day that I worked with him, or rather he was doing a scene, I come to visit the set and I was introduced and he shook my hand and I kind of went a little bit, and he did something. I think he walked across a room looking for something, and then he came over and stood next to me while we were watching the playback, and he went, "Do you think that was all right?" I said, "What, me?" He said, "Yeah, was that, what do you think, that was all right?" I said, "Yeah, well, yeah, it was great, really, yeah, anything like." He said, "Well," and then I made some comment, God only knows why, I made some vaguely critical comment about you could have gone and looked in the cupboard or something, and he went, "Okay." And he went away, and I thought, what did I do? Why didn't I just tell Lawrence Fishburne how to look in the cupboard? But we hit it off. We got on incredibly well. And in order not to be intimidated by his general superstardom and macho coolness, I called him Florence. And then the rest of the crew took it up. It was called Florence by a lot of people, which I think took him by surprise at first, but he took it in good stead after a while.
One of my favorite memories of Fish, though, is actually off the set. He was such a cool guy, and we set up this gym because all of the actors had to do a lot of wire work in the spacesuits. They had to be hung upside down, they were put into harnesses, and it's physically very difficult, so they had to be in very, very good shape. So we had a big gym set up at Pinewood for the actors, and they'd go in there at the end of the day. And at that point in my life, I was still trying to remain slightly fit, so I would go running at the end of the shooting day. And I went into the gym, and there was just me and Fish, and his favorite exercise was to hang upside down from these gravity boots, you know, those bars that you hang upside down from. So I walk into the gym, and he's hanging upside down, because usually he'd do like sit-ups upside down. He's hanging upside down like a big bat, looking really cool. He's the only guy who can hang upside down and look cool. So he's hanging upside down, and he says, "Hi, Paul," and we have this conversation, and we talk about this, and we talk about that, and slowly he works his way around to what he really wants to say, which is he can't get up. But he's too cool just to get to the point and go, "Oh, Paul, I can't get up, will you give me a hand?" We have to have a whole conversation first. And then eventually, because his stomach muscles were like so exhausted, and then I had to kind of help him up. But he was a great guy to work with. I hope we will work together again.
Sam Neill, also terrific, very professional. You know, we had a very social time on that film. I gave the cast membership to this new club that just opened in Soho, the Soho House, and every Friday night I would take a room there, and we would all sit around and talk, and we became friends. And Sam is still a very good friend and an excellent actor. I mean, like, Paul and I were only 29, 30 years old, so it was great to have this experience behind us.
I'd always seen Sam playing these authority figures. He plays, you know, kind of reactionary figures. He's often buttoned up and repressed, and I was rather taken aback at what kind of loose, free spirit he is, kind of embodying, I don't know about the 60s, but whatever he is, he's certainly not the characters he plays on screen. It took me a while to make the adjustment and realise he was a real laugh and incredibly mischievous. And he was there with his wife, Noriko, and they just loved to have a good time. And they were, you know, when we all went out, they were the last people to leave. And so he was one of the people that was tremendously good fun to do a scene with, because I don't think he takes acting too seriously. Not that he's not very good at it, but I think he thinks it's a rather silly way to make a living, and that comes across when you work.
One thing I can say about Sam Neill is if you've never worked with him, please keep your fingers crossed that you're going to work with him, because he is the guy. He's really quiet, very calm, you know, doesn't suffer fools. Amazing person to apply prosthetics on. I think Mark found that, because he's just there. He's so professional. And he was very nice to us, and he's got his own vineyards, and he gave us all a nice bottle of wine at the end of the film. He's a great guy. Really fantastic. Oh, and he loves watching. I mean, the makeup call was horrific. 1 o'clock in the morning, there was the makeup call. Then Sam was on set for all day, and then a couple of hours to take off the makeup in the evening. And he was just fantastic. The makeup was being applied because he had to sit there or stand there for so many hours. The Jungle Book was fantastic. He did tell us off for singing along, and kept telling us you might have to turn the film off because we were singing King of the Swingers, you know, all that. Anyway.
Sam Neill just gave so much to this movie. The end of the film, where he had to be in a full prosthetic suit, which I'm sure Pauline Fowler has told you how long it took to get into that. I mean, he would come to work, I think it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, so that they could spend 7 or 8 hours putting all of this makeup on him, all of these plastic pieces. We'd then shoot with him for about 5 hours. He'd be awake, having the stuff put on, having the stuff taken off, and have to deliver a performance. So he gave so much to the film. And also, incidentally, we were shooting this at Pinewood Studios on the Bond stage in the middle of winter. And the Bond stage is just like a big tin hut. There's no heating in there, and it's freezing cold. And Sam's naked underneath all these little plastic pieces, because he has to be. So he's like freezing his bollocks off as well, in a tremendous discomfort. And all we're doing is like ladling more and more freezing cold blood all over him.
Kathleen Quinlan, who we'd seen in The Doors, that's why we hired her. We thought she was very strong in that. Interestingly, she had a young son in real life, and her character has this child, and she'd had to leave her husband and her child in America to do this film in England, which was echoing her character in the film, who had to go into space to answer this distress call from the Event Horizon, the ship that had disappeared, 20 years earlier. So I think she brought a lot of that real life feeling into her part. I mean, I really, really think you feel for her when she's missing her child and she's feeling guilty about her child, and she very cleverly brought that in there. And I think the cast everybody has something you're guilty about. Everyone has done something horrific, and I think they all tapped into that a little bit. They didn't always tell me what it was, but I'm sure certainly they all had their dark pasts.
Kathleen Quinlan was I love the cast of this movie, so I have nothing but great things to say about them. She was terrific to work with, really so feisty, and I think some of the scariest stuff in the movie is stuff that she was involved in the medical bay.
Peters!
That's what I've learnt is the more movies I've done, really what sells the horror is what you see in somebody's eyes. That's what sells if you're doing a monster movie, that's really what sells the guy in the rubber suit. As the monster is the person who's reacting to it. Do they really, really look scared? And I think, that's some of my favorite stuff in the movie is where Kathleen's in the medical bay, because she looks genuinely terrified.
Well, Kathleen was a bit of a, although she's hardly older than me at all, but she was a mum, and she felt like a very safe place to go to, Kathleen. She's also a magnificent actress. Because what was weird about Event Horizon is that sometimes from a standing start, people had to go into incredibly extreme emotions because they were being confronted by their worst vision of themselves or whatever, and she'd be standing around chatting and then be completely traumatised, like only a mum could be, there's visions of her child running around. I just remember being terribly impressed by her. I find it easy to get bound up in the social atmosphere of work and forget that when they say action, you've got to do something extraordinary. And she reminded me all the time.
Jolie Richardson, who I think, her character, as I remember, might have originally been written as a guy. I think Lieutenant Stark was originally a guy. That's one of the things that when I cast, I always like to do, unless it's specific, we'll read both kind of men and women for particular roles, because sometimes it's kind of like fun to flip it around and change it.
Jolie was great. I'd never really done a part like this. You know, Jolie Richardson of the famous theatrical family, so she'd done a lot of sort of more dramatic orientated British films. I don't think she'd done much with guns or stunts, but she got really fit, she really embraced it, and we threw her around a lot. I mean, we just tossed her around. I mean, there's a scene at the end where the ship is breaking up and she's being sucked out and she's hanging on, and we've got, you know, big cannons blasting out air, and she was great, real trooper.
Give me a hand!
Jolie would always make me laugh. I don't know why. She just makes me laugh. Almost everything she says. I'm not sure she's trying to be funny most of the time either. And she laughed rather too loudly at lots of things I was saying when I really definitely wasn't trying to be funny. I think we got on very well and have remained friendly since. You know, it's much easier to stay friendly with the English people because the Americans you don't see. She, I think, couldn't believe that she was in this science fiction film, and saying some of the stuff to her was so alien, she'd say it and turn around and go, "What am I talking about?" And then it was a rhetorical question, but I would go to the bother of explaining what, you know, various force fields and black hole and worms were, and she'd go, "I don't care."
The antennae array is completely fried. We've got no radio, no laser, no high gain. No one's coming to help us.
She looked damn good in the jumpsuit.